At this point, I'm running out of things to say about Alex Pereira. Quite frankly, it's because he's just fighting way too much. This will be the third time breaking down an Alex Pereira main event pay-per-view in less than 6 months' time. He's back again to headline in Salt Lake City, Utah, UFC 307, where he will look to defend his light heavyweight championship of the world for a third successful time. To do so, he will have to take on Khalil Rountree, who has won 5 straight fights, 4 of them by way of knockout. For the challenger, Khalil Rountree, let's look at those 5 straight victories here, right? It starts in September of 2021 and it goes through December of last year. Modestas Bukauskas, knockout. Carl Robertson, knockout. A decision over Dustin Jacoby, a knockout of Chris Daukaus, and then a knockout of Anthony Smith being the most recent bout. So no fights in 2024 for Khalil Rountree. Well, and that is because he's been suspended throughout 2024. He is entering this title fight coming off a suspension due to a banned substance that was found in a supplement that he was taking. Now, he owned up to it. He brought it to light and to the attention of the MMA community, to the UFC even. So credit to him. It wasn't like he was intentionally trying to use performance-enhancing drugs or steroids, anything of that matter. But still, kind of strange that now in back-to-back, not even years, we had a fighter in the very first pay-per-view of 2023, Mayra Bueno Silva, get a title shot against Raquel Pennington coming off of a suspension. And now we're getting a second fighter in 9 months later getting a title fight coming off of a suspension. Kind of weird, kind of strange, especially when it's in this division specifically, you had a pretty clear number one contender in Magomed Ankalaev ready to take on Alex Pereira after he defeated Jiri Prochazka back in June. But I digress. Khalil Rountree has put together the win streak that really no one else has besides Magomed Ankalaev. So for that point alone, he has earned his spot to be amongst the elite. And it turns out he gets thrown right in to a title shot. If it weren't for that suspension, we would have got to see Khalil Rountree take on, well, I guess maybe we wouldn't have, but he was originally supposed to fight at International Fight Week Jamal Hill, someone who was a former light heavyweight champion coming off of his loss at International Fight Week, UFC 300, sorry. It's just crazy to keep track of all the monumental pay-per-views that Alex Pereira has been defending his title on. Khalil was supposed to fight Jamal Hill at UFC 303 back in June. Now, that is when the suspension happened. Then it turned out that Jamal Hill got injured, so he couldn't fight on that card. Anyway, it turned in what started as Khalil Rountree versus Jamal Hill as essentially a number one contender fight, turned into Anthony Smith fighting a middleweight Roman Dolidze. Imagine that little ladder of events that it took to get to that spot. But Khalil did not have to get a true number one contender fight. It turns out they threw him right into the wolves here against one of the most lethal strikers in the UFC's history and in mixed martial arts combat sports history, Alex Pereira. But let it not fool you just how dangerous Khalil Rountree is as a striker as well. A Muay Thai practitioner who spent years training at Tiger Muay Thai in Thailand. He is lethal. He is dangerous. And this win streak, 4 of the 5 being by finish, should show you just how dangerous and skilled he is when this fight takes place on the feet. And one more thing that I just have to point out here on this 5-fight win streak for Khalil Rountree, all 5 of them have been in the UFC Apex, Las Vegas, Nevada, with a minimal crowd. The last time that Khalil fought on a card in a jam-packed arena with thousands and thousands of people was actually the last time that he fought on a UFC pay-per-view card, and it was UFC 257, Conor McGregor versus Dustin Poirier 2, January 23rd, 2021 at the Etihad Arena in Abu Dhabi. How crazy is that? That is mind-boggling. That is a tale of 2 completely different, circumstances for these 2 main event fighters here. 5 straight Apex Fight Night cards, none of them even as a main event for Khalil Rountree, whereas he's taking on Alex Pereira, who in 2024 alone will have headlined the biggest card in mixed martial arts history, UFC 300, gets a knockout. International Fight Week, one of the biggest pay-per-views of 2024, UFC 303 knocks out Jiri Prochazka, and now here, a huge pay-per-view, UFC 307, Salt Lake City, Utah, a fight card that will feature 2 title fights, a number 1 contender fight in the women's bantamweight division, numerous ranked fighters and legends like Jose Aldo. Alex Pereira is the guy for the UFC. He is the face of the UFC right now. And Khalil Rountree, a guy that's just been fighting on these little fight night cards in the Apex, will look to dismantle all of that momentum. And as I said off the top, what more can I truly say here about Alex Pereira? From a storyline perspective, from an X's and O's stylistic perspective, you know everything there is to know about him because the guy will not stop fighting. He's a former 2-weight world champion in kickboxing, all the victories over Israel Adesanya, transitions into mixed martial arts, becomes the middleweight champion, becomes the light heavyweight champion, has fought how many champions at this point? Jiri Prochazka, Jamal Hill, Jan Blachowicz, Israel Adesanya, Sean Strickland. 5 champions in the UFC Alex Pereira has already fought and beat them, and he just entered the UFC in November of 2021. 9 total fights in the UFC, 8 victories, only 1 loss. 6 of those 9 victories are to those former champions. Now you're saying, well, how did you get to 6 when there was 5? He has 2 wins over Jiri, right? The resume is undeniable. The way in which Alex Pereira has taken over this sport in literally less than 3 full years, from November of 2021 to October of 2024, is unlike anything that we've ever seen before, and he will look to continue building what is already a UFC Hall of Fame resume if he can finish, or maybe not even finish, but let's be honest, if this fight goes 25 minutes, it's not going 25 minutes. If he looks to finish and defend his title, he can do it against Khalil Rountree, someone who has not lost in almost 4 years, essentially at this point, January of 2021. We know what both of these fighters are going to look to do. It's a matter of who is going to land first and who is going to land more often. Khalil Rountree finished 4 of his last 5 via knockout. Alex Pereira on a 3-fight knockout win streak. Someone is going to be put to sleep. Someone is going to come out as the light heavyweight champion in very convincing fashion. Khalil Rountree can shock the world, essentially, go from not an unknown, but to the casual MMA audience. This is a chance for him to catapult himself into the mainstream, whereas Alex Pereira has earned the hearts and love from pretty much every MMA fan in the world with what he has done on this historic run that he's had. This is a firefight. Someone will go to sleep. Who's it going to be? The winner will come out in a very, very big way. The gold belt wrapped around their waist to storm into 2025 with an insane amount of momentum. What do you think? Who's it going to be? Give me your predictions for the UFC 307 main event in the comments below. Essentially, who's getting the knockout? Who's getting the finish? Maybe I won't rule out the possibility of a submission, even though, let me make sure my math is correct, 9 knockouts for Alex Pereira, 9 knockouts for Khalil Rountree, 13 plus 11 is 25, 9 plus 9 is 18. 18 of the 25 victories between these two fighters have been by way of knockout. That submission prop, I know some of you out there, you degenerates out there, like myself, are going to be sprinkling on a submission. I just know it. Don't deny it in the comments below. Give me your bets. Give me your predictions. Who's walking out UFC 307, the light heavyweight king? And from the main event, let's talk about the co-main event because it is title fight number 2. The women's bantamweight champion, Raquel Pennington, will look to defend her title that she won in a vacant bout with Mayra Bueno Silva back in January at UFC 297. To do so, to retain that belt, she will have to defend against the former bantamweight champion, Julianna Pena, having not fought since July of 2022. The biggest storyline in this fight, to me, is quite simple. This is 2 OGs of women's mixed martial arts coming together for the first time. Somehow, some way, they have went about their careers having never truly crossed paths and being locked in that cage with one another until now, October 5th of 2024. Raquel Pennington made her professional debut March 3rd of 2012, over 12 years ago, and Julianna Pena debuted May 9th of 2009, over 15 years ago. You will not find many women in today's mixed martial arts landscape, in today's UFC, Bellator, PFL rosters that have been fighting for as long as these two women have, that have paved the way for where women's mixed martial arts is today. So say what you want about this fight, about this women's bantamweight division. Believe me, I've been a critic of this women's bantamweight division over the past couple of years because of how stale it has been, but this feels like a true moment to get the division going. We've seen some other fights happening in the division. We have a number one contender fight on this very card, and we have the two OGs fighting for the title. Someone has to win, someone has to lose. And to add to the point of the OGs of this fight game having been a combined 27 years into the game, let us not forget, these two ladies, Raquel Pennington and Julianna Pena, competed on the very same season of The Ultimate Fighter. November 30th, 2013. Julianna Pena got a victory on The Ultimate Fighter Season 18 finale to become the winner of that season, to be the Ultimate Fighter. But on that very same card, Raquel Pennington also got a victory against Roxanne Modafferi. However, that was not to become the champion. That was not to become the Ultimate Fighter. That was to essentially just make sure she stayed in the UFC since she did not win that season. Raquel got eliminated in the semifinals of that year. Julianna Pena ran the table. Their paths still, though, even though they were on the same season of The Ultimate Fighter, they debuted on the same card, the same night back in 2013, have never once fought one another. And here we are now, after the fighting and clawing of both women, first with the champion Raquel Pennington, started out her UFC career 2-2 before tallying off 4 straight victories. What did that win streak get her? A title fight in May of 2018 against Amanda Nunes, the greatest women's fighter of all time. She loses there in a beatdown in a fight that got stopped 2.5 minutes into the 5th round. After that fight, Raquel Pennington loses 2 out of her next 3, looking like her career was essentially at a standstill. Wasn't much more to see from the longtime veteran, but then she wins 1, she wins 2, she wins 3, she wins 4, she wins 5 straight fights in a row from June of 2020 to January of 2023, and then nearly 1 full year later to the date, January 20th, 2024, due to the circumstances of the retirement of Amanda Nunes, the injuries of Julianna Pena, Raquel finds herself in a number one contender spot, but with no true champion, therefore getting to fight for the vacant bantamweight championship against Mayra Bueno Silva, and Raquel Pennington gets that fight done, gets the victory via unanimous decision, has now won 6 fights in a row, and she welcomes back Julianna Pena. But for Julianna, it wasn't quite the same story as Raquel Pennington. Raquel had some rocky roads, no pun intended, after her Ultimate Fighter finale performance where she got to stay in the UFC. But for Julianna, she won the Ultimate Fighter and then went on another 3 straight victories. Started 4-0 technically as a UFC fighter, but didn't get to that title fight. She essentially got to a number one contender fight where we saw her get submitted in the 2nd round to Valentina Shevchenko back in January of 2017. We know Valentina would go on to have a rivalry with Amanda Nunes, fight her twice. We know that she would go on to become the flyweight queen, lose the belt, and just recently regain it back at Noche UFC. And from there, we've seen a lot of inactivity for Julianna due to injuries and due to becoming a mother. From July 13th of 2019 to July 30th of 2022, we've only seen Julianna Pena fight 5 total times, and she's went 3-2 throughout that stretch, and again, hasn't fought since July 30th of 2022. But during those 5 fights, what did we see her do? She lost to Jermaine Durandamy, bounced back and submitted Sarah McMahon. That earned her a title shot against Amanda the Lioness Nunes, the infamous UFC 269, December of 2021, one of the greatest upsets in UFC history, in women's mixed martial arts history. Julianna Pena submits Amanda Nunes in the 2nd round to become the bantamweight champion of the world. They run back the rematch. Amanda Nunes dominates her from start to finish, goes on to defend against the likes of Irene Aldana before retiring. And now here we are, somehow, some way, 2.5 years removed from a loss and her last fight. Julianna still gets a crack to become the champion once again. These two women are absolute dogs. You can go through and see their losses, see their victories, see their ups and downs, their win streaks, their losses, everything in between, and they've never quit. They've always fought and fought and fought. Look at the title loss that Julianna had to Amanda Nunes. Look at the title loss that Raquel Pennington had to Amanda Nunes. They gave everything they had to give, but Amanda was just too much to handle, as she was for essentially every woman that she ever faced in this bantamweight division. But now, the two junkyard dogs of the women's bantamweight division, the two junkyard dog OGs of women's mixed martial arts that are still around to this day, will collide. You have the more quiet champion in Raquel Pennington, who likes to just get the action done inside the cage. She doesn't go out of her way to trash talk her opponents, to promote fights in a crazy fashion, but Julianna does exactly that. That is the whole reason she essentially got the title fight to begin with Amanda Nunes in 2021, because Julianna was able to trash talk her opponents, call out Amanda Nunes on all of these interviews, MMA Junkies, MMA Hours, everything in between. That is what put her in that title shot performance. That is what's put her here in this title shot opportunity, because throughout the inactivity, she has remained relevant in this women's bantamweight division that has been struggling the last couple of years. But as I said at the top of this discussion, it seems to be making a turn with this title fight here, a number one contender fight between Ketlin Vieira and Kayla Harrison in the featured bout. Things finally look good for 135 pounds for the women for the first time in a long time. Give me your predictions for the title fights in the comments below. Who comes out the light heavyweight champion? Who leaves as the women's bantamweight champion? Will it be Raquel Pennington? Will it be Julianna Pena becoming a two-time champ? Give me your bets, give me your predictions, and everything in between. If you enjoyed this title fight breakdown, please be sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new. Every single week, I will break down and preview the biggest storylines and what is at stake for the best fights. I also recap the most meaningful results from every card and give my thoughts and opinions on MMA news and fight announcements. You can join the community on social media at Verbal Spar MMA on X, Instagram, and TikTok, and you can follow on your favorite audio listening platform if you like long-form, all-in-one-place podcast episodes. They drop every Friday and Monday on Spotify, Apple, and more. Have a great weekend, enjoy the fights, and I will see you in the next video.